This meeting is being recorded and/or transcribed.
Okay, I guess that's a good thing. I'm showing that it's about 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to the committee meeting portion of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy. This section of the meeting is where our committees will be meeting to discuss agenda items that will actually be acted upon at the board meeting tomorrow. And before we get too far into that, I would like to welcome our newest member of the board, David Crenshaw. David, glad to have you here. David is going to be fulfilling the role of one of the board members that has an attorney or legal background. And David, I'll just turn the floor over to you, and we'll do this tomorrow also for the board meeting. If you'd like to just briefly introduce yourself and any background you'd like to offer up.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin, and thanks, fellow board members. Appreciate you welcoming me so kindly. Looking forward to working with you. I'm a native Nashvilleian, born and raised here, a volunteer at heart, wonderful family, 3 kids, and very proud of this profession, what it's done for me personally as well.
We're glad to have you on the board, David, and look forward to hopefully many years of contributions, and just thank you so much for accepting this call to serve. We'll go ahead and get right into the agenda, and the first committee that's up on the agenda is our licensing committee, and I think we have a quorum of the committee present, assuming that folks are online. So Janet Booker-Davis, if you would like to begin as the committee, Pam Church, if you would like to begin as the committee chair, we'll go ahead and work through the agenda for the licensing group.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. We have 3 official items today. 2 are petitions for extensions on credits for CPA exam parts, and then 1 is a petition to count an exam as CPE. So the first one is from Logan Doris. Logan is currently a student in the MAC program at Middle Tennessee State. He has credit for BEC and Audits. His BEC expires March 8th, 2022, and he's requesting an extension until May 8th, 2022. The situation is that on August 29th, his father had a sudden heart attack while out of town in Crossville and was airlifted to Knoxville, where he stayed 45 days. The family is in Nashville. Because of COVID protocols, only the closest relative could stay with the father, and that is Logan. So he stayed there 45 days and then another 2 weeks when he returned home to get him adjusted. So because of the loss in valuable time and no doubt extra stress, he has requested the same amount that he lost while caring for his father to extend to May the 8th, which is 8 weeks, I believe is what I had determined. So is there discussion on this?
This is Janet. I thought that it was fine to extend it. I guess I was just wondering if anyone felt if the extension should be longer.
Well, I was wondering if this was really going to help him out much. He seemed to be very, modest in simply saying, I need that time back. Would you want to make a motion for a different time period?
Well, I was noticing on some of the ones from last time, we were extending through July 31st, I think it was. So, although I can't remember now why we extended through July, I guess I didn't know how anybody else felt about giving him more time because I didn't know how much that would help him either. And sometimes, when you do have a death in the family, you kind of get brain fog.
Fortunately, this was not a death. He did recover and got back home.
Oh, that's right, a heart attack, yeah. Okay.
But he was right there for 45 days. So do you think would you want to propose extending till July 1st? Is that your proposal, or?
I think the other ones we did through July 31st, so I can make a motion to offer an extension to, July 31st.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, right?
I think we would probably want to see if there's any more discussion.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I think you're good, Pam.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Pamela Church,
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Gay Moon,
Aye.
Judy Weatherby,
Motion passes.
Okay. Our second petition is from Javon Mead, who's requesting a 9-week extension on his reg part to March the 5th due to loss of job and canceling of FAR by Prometric in November 2020. He has passed reg and BEC. The reg actually expired January 1st. BEC expires May 23rd. June the 4th, 2020, he was laid off from his job with Deloitte Tax. He states that he had to postpone studying to prioritize his reestablishing his career, and he did not specify, but I would add, no doubt, a lot of stress around losing, a professional job. And furthermore, he stated, he made the point that on October 19th, 2020, Prometric informed him that his FAR exam scheduled for November 8th, 2020 was canceled, so he had to reschedule for December 6th, as the majority of the spots in testing centers in Houston, where he lived at the time, were taken. Also, because of that same problem, he had to reschedule for San Antonio, which was a 3-hour drive. So changing like that, of course, created extra burden, but also delayed his receipt of scores, which he said created additional time, or took away some additional time that he would have been concentrating on his studying. He said the time between the initial FAR test, November 8th, and the score release, December 16th, that he could have been studying. So the score release was delayed from an expected November 24th until receiving it December 15th. So he's asking for a 9-week extension. Discussion on this.
Yes, your letter E.
I have no problem. No problem with the 9-week extension. Do we want to consider more that may allow him to focus on audit and FAR?
That
my
was my
thoughts.
concern.
Well,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, I wasn't sure 9 weeks was gonna be enough to help him. So I wouldn't be opposed
And we're already
to
a couple of
making
weeks
that
into
longer.
it also. Yeah. What about extending this to the July 31st as well? It's sort of similar time period.
Mm-hmm. I'm good with that. With Janet.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rushing you. Any other comments, first of all? If not, would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
roll call vote, please.
Pamela Church,
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Gay Moon,
Aye.
Judy Weatherby,
Aye.
The third one is a petition for us to consider. A licensee asked that we consider the Certified Government Financial Management, CGFM exam for CPE credit. This certification is a professional certification demonstrating competency in governmental accounting, auditing, financial reporting, internal controls, and budgeting at the federal, state, and local levels. The certification is awarded by the National Association of Government Accountants, the AGA. To obtain the CGFM certification, candidates must sit for 3 comprehensive exams in the areas of governmental environment. The second one is governmental accounting, financial reporting, and budgeting. And the third one is governmental financial management and control. Each exam has 115 questions and is 2 hours and 15 minutes in length. We have a formula that we go by. So if approved, each exam would provide 11.25 hours of CPE, and the proposed categories are for examination 1, which is governmental environment. The proposed field of study is specialized knowledge. For exam 2, which is governmental accounting, financial reporting, and budgeting, the proposed technical field of study is governmental accounting. And for examination 3, which is governmental financial management and control, the proposed technical field of study is governmental auditing. So the relevant rule 0020-05.048 says CPE may be allowed for the successful completion of exams for certified management accountant, certified information systems auditor, as well as other similar exams approved by the board. Credit will be awarded at a rate of 5 times the length of each exam taken and limited to 50% of the total CPE required under Rule 0020-05-03. So we are asked to review and determine the eligibility of the CGFM exam for CPE credit in the technical fields of study specified. Is there discussion?
That's a pretty comprehensive exam, all 3 of them. I mean, we've approved very similar types of exams, and I think the areas of expertise that are identified for the different fields is appropriate based on what the tests are covering. I suggest that we approve it for CPE.
My only question at all, I think I would approve it too. I'm not familiar with this organization. Do we know if we ever approved anything? I don't see on the list from before.
Did you say from this organization?
Yes. I'm just not familiar with that organization, but it may be fine.
Sherry, do you know anything else that they offer?
No, I'm not. I do not. I know that we have approved the Certified Financial Public Officer. I can't remember the designation that MTAS offers through the state. And I will say based on I've taken this exam. Okay, so I've taken these exams. These are at a much higher level than the ones that have been approved at for the municipal accountants and that type of thing. It is quite comprehensive.
This is Kevin. I'm a former member of the AGA from earlier in my career, and it is a very well-regarded national organization, and this credential is also very well-regarded.
Sherry, did you say you had taken this exam?
Yes, I've taken all 3. I just passed them.
Oh, okay.
Recently.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. It sounds like it would be difficult.
It was challenging. I don't know that I'll do this again.
I'll make a motion or do I need to second a motion that we approve it? I think, Gay, didn't you make a motion to approve it?
I suggested, but I can make that as a motion, yes, that we
Okay.
approve.
I'll second the motion.
All right, roll call vote.
Pamela Church,
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Gay Moon,
Aye.
Judy Weatherby,
Aye.
All right, Pam, any other items from your committee for discussion today?
Wendy, do you want our committee to bring up the reinstatement case?
Yeah, I think this is, if anybody has any questions, this would be a good time to talk about it if you'd like.
Okay. We have a case to be considered tomorrow from Amy Zerwinski. This is a case that was decided quite a while ago, and you received the materials. As she states, in 2007, she was associated with inaccurate personal mortgage loan applications. The government was seeking information about real estate investors who were leading and guiding mortgage schemes. The government recognized that she and her husband were victims of the schemes, but they had fault as well because they should have used more due diligence. So they pled guilty. They were never charged. They pled guilty and cooperated with the government in their cases against the leaders of the mortgage crime. Per the judge, quote, they certainly did not benefit from it, quote, and the judge also agreed with the government that the husband was more blameworthy than the wife. And so she is asking for reinstatement. Is there discussion on this case? Her supervision has been terminated. She is eligible to make this petition at this time.
Pam, just to kind of for background purposes, tomorrow's presentation will be the first of two presentations. So we typically have a two-step process for reinstatement. The first, and what we will be considering tomorrow, is whether or not the application for reinstatement is appropriate and complete. And then at our next meeting, she will likely be asked to appear, and we will have a chance to ask questions of her. And it's at that second meeting that we would make a decision, a final decision as to whether we would reinstate or not. But her probation has recently ended, and so one of the conditions for her suspension was that it would remain in place until her probationary period was completed. So really the issue that we will be focusing on tomorrow is the completeness and appropriateness of the application and the background information that she has submitted.
Okay. So I would think at this time, if anyone wanted to discuss anything, I guess, in preparation for what we'll be doing tomorrow, if you needed clarification or something you've noted missing or something like that.
Wendy or Maria, from your perspective, have the materials that we received been complete?
I believe so. The one thing that's not in your packet is her continuing education. She has had a suspended license, and the rules require someone on a suspended license to continue to renew and to continue to get the continuing education requirements, although they can't use the designation. So she has kept up with all of that. She's renewed timely. She has submitted her CPE, so she has done everything she needed to do to stay in compliance with that in that respect.
She's paid the reinstatement application fee and so forth.
And then as far as on legal's end, the agreed order required for the probation to be over in order for her to reinstate. And we do have evidence that her probationary period has been terminated.
I think your action tomorrow would be to approve the application and then I don't believe the agreed order requires her to be here in May. So you all would be good if you decide if you want her to come in May to answer questions to make that part of the motion tomorrow.
Thanks, Wendy.
And so as far as you all have determined the application is complete, looks complete, and
Yes.
okay.
I have a legal question, Maria. How can you plead guilty if you're not charged? That just confused me in her statement.
I'll have to look into that.
I don't think
She said she
Guilty of
pled guilty and was not charged. There was a judgment against her.
Yeah, I just she represents that she pled guilty, but she was never charged.
I'll relook at the
Okay.
convictions from the original agreed order, and then I'll confirm that for you, Judy.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Ma'am, are there any other questions with respect to
Sounds like,
the application for
doesn't sound
reinstatement?
like that, have you? I have no issues, so if no one else has brought up anything, I think that does it.
Okay. Pam, thank you. Again, the licensing committee seemed to have a lot of the heavy lifting among the committees this quarter. So thank you again for your leadership, and also all of the members for working through the various action items.
Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome. The next committee is the Enforcement Committee, chaired by Greg Gilbert. And so, Greg, I'll turn the agenda over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. And I need to welcome new committee member David Crenshaw also. David, we are very pleased to have you on the committee. And as I told David earlier, I actually met his wife a few years ago. She was one of the bridesmaids in my oldest daughter's wedding, but I hadn't met David yet. So it's a real honor and privilege to have you with us, David. The first item on the agenda for the Enforcement Committee is the Case and Complaint Report, which you have in your package. And this report is informational in nature. I don't think there are any items of action for us, but there are 9 cases listed on the report, and 5 involve individual CPA license, and then 4 involve registered accounting firms. And if you look kind of toward the middle of the page, it says activity type description, and I think 5 of those cases are they're closed with payment plans. And then if you look at the far right column, we're tracking those for CPE and other compliance. But again, that's informational in nature. And then at the very bottom of the report, you see the complaints open by year. And we've had 24 complaints open since July 1st of 21. So questions on that report? Okay. And I should thank Maria and Wendy again for their work in putting these reports together for us. I know there's been a tremendous amount of work, especially on the next report, the legal report. And we have a number of cases this time, and I will just remind us that Maria and Wendy have spent an enormous amount of time on these cases. I know Kevin has spent time, I've spent a good bit of time, and then Wendy and I met earlier today. And so though we will have some differences as to what we think the appropriate penalties are, but we may never get through these reports if we spend too much time worrying about $500 here or there. But we want to do, I think Kevin said this earlier, we want to do what's appropriate. And some of that's going to be judgmental. So we will get through these as best as we can. The first 6 cases, and I'm going to be working primarily from the synopsis report. You have a 2-page synopsis in your package, and then you have a more detailed report. So we'll work primarily from the synopsis. The first 6 cases are consent agenda items, and it may be that we can get all 6 of these approved with one motion. We'll work through those and see. They're not extremely difficult cases, and the recommendations, I think, are fair, appropriate. The first case involves failure to exercise due professional care with respect to tax services. The complainant is actually the son of an individual who operated some private foundations, and the complaint was that the tax returns had not been filed or not timely filed, and the respondent was able to produce proof of mailing for all the returns and provided those to our investigator. He was not able to provide them to the person who filed the complaint because we're not sure that that person has legal standing. The IRS has said that person does not have legal standing, but I think that summarizes the case. And so the recommendation from staff is that we close that one. Comments, questions?
Greg, I do have a comment from Larry. Earlier I explained to Greg that since Larry is not here and he submitted some comments to me, so traditionally he would, ask these questions, but I'm just going to do that for him. So the first question, he said on bullet points 2 of this entry, if he has documentation that all were filed timely, why is he refiling the returns, and why was there a late filing penalty that had to be removed by the IRS for 2016 and the other year returns? I talked to Sherry about this. I'm going to let her answer just because she investigated this.
I'll be glad to relay that information. Basically, when I spoke to the respondent about this, he had reached out to the IRS. He had proof of mailings and return receipts. From these returns went back, as you can see from the actual report, a number of years ago. And basically, the information provided to him by the IRS was that they did not receive the return. And because they had not received the return, they could not deal with even an abatement request until they actually received the return. So he was advised by the IRS to refile the 4 returns in question, and once those were accepted by the IRS, then he could provide his abatement request with the proof of filing and receipt by the IRS, and then they would consider that at that point. I actually did, and this is not reflected in the legal report because it just happened this morning, I did get an update from the respondent, who's been very good at following up. They have finally gotten an abatement request on 1 of the 4. They're still working on the other 3. I don't know if that answers Larry's question. If there's others, Larry, I guess maybe you could hit us in the chat.
And actually, in practice, sometimes the IRS loses returns that are manually filed, and I think this practitioner has good documentation that the returns were timely submitted, and the IRS has just asked that they be refiled because they're lost somewhere. Correct.
So the only thing I would add to that was that there was a complication early on in terms of getting this resolved because of the power of attorney issue. When the respondent first attempted to resolve the matter for the client, the firm discovered that the power of attorney had been revoked because a new firm was completing the returns currently. And there was some challenges in getting that power of attorney reestablished as well. But that has been reestablished as of today, and the respondent is still actively trying to resolve the issue for the client.
Answer Larry's question.
I haven't heard that we haven't.
Okay. We'll move forward then to the next one, and then we can, if his answer pops up or response, let me know. We can go back. The second case is a failure to comply with audit standards regarding a successor/predecessor auditor communication. This is respondent's first offense. The respondent did communicate with some individuals and with the client and asked the question. So, if you will, trying to do alternate procedures, but you really can't do that when you're dealing with the successor or predecessor audit. This is respondent's first offense, and according to our notes, respondent attempted to comply with the intent of the standard, that is the communication. And so the recommendation from staff is closed with letter of warning. Good. Did Larry have a question? No. Okay. Case number 3 is a case involving a family situation. Some money was loaned from a mother and stepfather to a son. Well, I said it was loaned, it was transferred. Let's use that word. And I suppose there was a question whether that was a loan or something else. What actually happened was an LLC was formed, and the parents, the mother and the stepfather, took some ownership in the LLC, and the complainant apparently didn't understand that. But that's in litigation, and so staff recommendation is that we place that one in litigation monitoring status.
Greg, this is all the complainant out of the, that's what
I don't know out. I think maybe put the money in, but they probably took an interest, ownership interest in the LLC.
he and his wife respond.
There are multiple,
Rob-
there are
Rob.
multiple issues on this. There's a suit and countersuit going on currently. And yes, there is allegations that the complainant withdrew money from the LLC inappropriately as well. So both parties are pointing to each other saying that you're taking money out inappropriately.
Rob, can you make sure that your mic is on? Okay.
Are we good with?
Yeah,
with
I
litigation
just wanted to
monitoring?
make sure I understood
Sure.
that correctly.
Sure. Case number 4 is failure to exercise due professional care, tax returns, security of client records. The client appeared in the respondent's office sometime in April, right in the height of tax season, with records that got misplaced. According to the respondent, he took the records home to do some tax research, and those records got misplaced. The respondent did file an extension for the complainant, but investigator, I assume that was you, Sherry, visited the respondent's office, and security appears to be appropriate. These were just misplaced records, and we have the recommendation that we close this one with a letter of warning. I will note that this is respondent's first offense. He is also, I believe, scanning records now when they come in, Sherry. Is that...
Yes, he's making corrective actions, and the only other thing I would add to that description is that the respondent did attempt to work with the complainant to retrieve his tax records through a tax transcript.
Would you suggest to the respondent that he close his office April 1st to 15th with respect to new records coming in? I'm teasing. That's a very busy time, as we all know. So.
Places I've worked, that's exactly been the standard operating procedure.
Okay. Case number 5 is a failure to exercise due professional care regarding tax services. One of the issues in this case is conversion from a partnership to a C corporation. According to the respondent, she provided an analysis of what the effect would be of conversion from a partnership to a C corporation. And then there were some other potential tax matters picked up by our investigator when the case was reviewed. Again, this is respondent's first offense, and we have recommended close with a letter of warning. Comments? Questions?
What years?
I was going to see if I can remember off the top of my head. I need to think 2020. Let me verify
Okay,
that.
I mean, that makes sense with all tax rate.
Yeah. Actually, I take that back. It's 2019, not 2020.
Eddie, good with the letter of warning?
This is Rob. I'm looking at.
There you go.
Okay, I got to release the button. Here I was warning you how to deal with the microphone. These errors, these supposed errors on the tax return, they look, I don't know, they look pretty bad. Out of balance balance sheet, potential taxable income not counted, and bad debts taken. I mean, that looks to be pretty bad to me. Is a letter of warning enough? I mean, did you verify that these mistakes were made?
Basically, what had happened is another licensee completed the return after all of these issues. And yes, I spoke with and looked at documentation from the other licensee to verify that these were inaccuracies.
So what the other,
I should say verify. As far as the information the second licensee had, they would have been errors. The problem, I guess, is we never know what was presented to the first licensee.
that was going to be one of my things.
That's
And
what I
then the
thought.
second one was how finished was the product that the second licensee was looking at. I mean, there could have been some, the truck sale may have been put somewhere else on the return, but not identified as the sale of,
He did not have access to the first licensee's tax return, to my
Okay.
knowledge. As far as the depreciation question that came up, the depreciation for that asset, I did have access to the return that was provided by the first licensee,
Okay.
and I actually had a copy of the previous return that was provided by another licensee. So they've changed, I guess, every year, so to speak. But when you look at the depreciation schedule from the 2018 return, you can see where the bonus depreciation was taken on the previous year's return. And if I could see it, I would think that perhaps the licensee who prepared the 19 return should have seen it also, if that makes sense. I'm not a tax person, so it's like when I see it, I start to say that maybe the other individual probably should have seen it too. But it was clear from the 2018 return that the bonus depreciation had been taken on the truck that was sold in 2019.
When you were looking at that return, did you also have access to what had been given to the respondent?
I had some information that was provided through basically the emails and the attachments that were given were provided. A lot of this was in a QuickBooks file, though, and no, I did not access the QuickBooks file.
I don't really know what he from.
Right.
That's where just like I'm not an accountant, so I do defer to Sherry on a lot of these things and understand that they can be pretty serious. But I guess from a legal perspective, negligence or like lack of due professional care is a hard thing to prove if it were to go to hearing. And so I went with letter of warning based on the fact that the respondent states that she's pretty adamant that she filed based on the information she was given by the complainant. So that kind of was where my questioning was coming in of like, what did she have, but you all are the accountants. So if you feel that this is something that needs to be moved to discipline, then I'm fine with that as well. But
I would say the biggest black hole is what is in the QuickBooks file. That's the biggest black hole in the situation.
Say that again, please.
What is in the QuickBooks file is probably the biggest black hole because I was provided information out of QuickBooks, but I did not have actual access to QuickBooks.
I guess from my perspective, I mean, I can see how the first 3 bullet points could be bad information, but an out of balance balance sheet on a tax return.
And let me say,
know?
I don't disagree with you. I find these negligent myself,
Right.
not being a tax. I'm not, again, I was primarily more on the attest side than the tax side when I was practicing, but I find these negligent as well.
Do we know if it's going to cost the complainant any money
The complainant
with the IRS?
No, because basically what happened is the return that was filed by the respondent was rejected by the IRS because they made a change of status from a partnership to a C corporation in 2019. The 1120 was filed, but the election was not received by the IRS, so they rejected the 1120. So as far as the IRS is concerned, the return she prepared doesn't exist because they rejected it.
Did the respondent get compensated? I can't remember.
Yes, she was paid for her services.
She was paid for her
Yes.
services. Okay.
As far as the complainant to unravel the matter, he did hire an attorney. He did hire another CPA to do the returns correctly. I do not believe that there is, I believe the late penalty was waived because when the other CPA filed the return at that point, it was late. But the second CPA was able to request the one-time abatement and got the late penalty waived.
I do think we have to be careful when we're analyzing another practitioner's work. So, as you mentioned, Rob, those first 3 bullet points, the first one in particular, payments made on behalf of the owners of the C Corp were not treated as dividend distributions. Well, maybe they weren't supposed to be. Maybe they were loan repayments. You know, who knows? It sounds like we had a messy set of books, and which complicates the whole situation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we have to be careful as well when we're analyzing another, I guess this is a CPA's work, not knowing exactly what information was received or not received, and it could be very messy.
I just had I'm with you, Rob, on that. The first 3 are fine, but to have a balance sheet out of balance on the tax return is.
But I mean, that could have been an early draft of a return, and
it was filed.
I mean, maybe,
right?
I don't know.
My understanding it was filed.
Yes, the return.
I thought they said it was rejected.
The return that had the Schedule L out of balance was filed, was represented to the complainant. I mean, was represented to the complainant as filed.
I just don't see how that happens. With modern software, I just don't see that. I see that all the time. And
well, yeah, I don't see that happening either. I don't even see how that would have gone through a tax software if it was out of balance. I mean, that's just my opinion. I would stay away from this kind of thing without having all the information and, you know, knowing what was really provable or not provable. That's just my opinion.
So what's the pleasure of the committee? Would we like to accept the recommendation, or would we like to change it?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
First offense as well.
I think this is appropriate. I just don't see how, not knowing what the preparer had and knowing how tax software can be kind of quirky, if this was filed early in the season and not all the kinks are worked out. I mean, this is their first offense. I would go along with the recommendation.
Barry has mentioned in the chat that he's okay with it. He's a member of the committee. And before we vote on the consent grouping, Mr. Chairman, Larry had one additional question on the first case that I think at least Maria was going to bring up. She might not be able to answer until tomorrow.
So we can go back to that now, but are we good with case 5? I believe the committee is expressing. Okay. Okay. So back to case 1.
Yes, so there is history that this respondent self-reported a civil lawsuit. I was looking at that right now in their folder, but I just want to go back through that complaint. Larry's question was whether or not that self-reporting in 2020 was the complaint we're seeing today. There's several. Are you saying those?
No, it's not.
Okay, it's different. It's totally different. But I will say, just for history's purpose, that lawsuit was closed. There was no action that came from that, and I have that documentation in the folder.
Case number 6 involves unlicensed activity. Respondent did not understand the meaning of, quote, compilation, unquote, under board laws and rules. Respondent took immediate action to remove the language from her website. This is not a CPA firm. It's a firm that does bookkeeping / consulting services. And so the recommendation is that we close with a letter of instruction. Larry, have a question? Maria, did Larry have a question on that one?
Sorry, no comments on
okay.
that one. Thanks.
Okay, so I think at this point, Mr. Chairman, what we can do is vote to approve the cases on the consent agenda, have the committee approve those. So I would entertain a motion from committee to do that.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the board that we approve what has been recommended for the first 6 cases.
Well stated. Thank you, Gay. We have a motion, a second? Second. We do not need a roll call on this, or do we? Because Larry is remote.
I think we should probably have a roll call. Well, we have a majority here.
We do.
Don't we?
Yes.
Okay. Do we need a roll? Okay.
I think that's what we've done in the past. If we had a majority here, we don't. But, okay, so all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, no? Okay, thank you.
If I could, this is Tony Glandorf, Chief Counsel. It's been brought to our attention that the administration required roll call votes for all committee or board meetings where any one of the members are participating electronically. And that's what I would recommend you all do.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
So we have a motion and a second, correct? So we could do roll call?
Fred Gilbert.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
David Crenshaw. Aye. Robert Vance.
Aye.
Larry Elmore.
He votes aye in the chat.
So the motion's approved. Thank you. The cases just get more interesting as we go along. So now we're under the proposed discipline section, and I will be surprised if we can group all these and get one motion to approve them, but we will see. So many of these, I think there are 9 cases, and I believe I counted that 7 of them involve peer review in some form or another. So we will work through those, starting with case number 7. This one is an issue with the Board of Licensing Contractors. David, just for your information, we get 2 to 5 to 7 cases per meeting from the Board of Licensing Contractors because people who have CPA license sign compilation or review reports that go to the Board of Licensing Contractors, but these individuals have not gone through peer review. The CPAs that prepare the reports have not gone through peer review, so they're not authorized to do that type of activity. So we have, I think, 2 of those from the Board of Licensing Contractors this time. But case number 7, again, is unlicensed activity, peer review violation. And this is respondent's first offense. Respondent was newly licensed in 2019, and at this point has not been required to take the state-specific ethics course in which we cover this issue. But the staff recommendation is a civil penalty of $750. Questions or comments? Maria.
I have a comment on behalf of Larry. He did ask the question, why wouldn't this penalty be doubled since he issued 2 review reports? And he referenced a case 13 for consistency. So I will say, this one we looked at differently because of the fact that he was newly licensed and he had not had the opportunity to take the state-specific ethics course where it goes through and details that you need a peer review and firm permit to do a test work. So that was a mitigating factor that we considered in this. So just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Other questions, comments?
I'm not on the committee, but can I ask a question
Absolutely.
about the, it says the respondent revoked the report. What does that mean? Did he get them back and all copies, or?
Essentially, I think that was the language he used in his response. So basically, he just sent them a letter saying these are not, to be used anymore. He's taking them back. So I guess revoked is the word we use, but whatever it says where you take it back and say, please don't use this.
Do we have a copy of that communication or no?
I'll double check.
Okay.
Did he actually get the report? Well, I don't know how he would ever know he got all of them anyway, including copies. But, okay, I was just curious.
He did, Janet, say that he referred the client to a properly licensed firm to complete the reports.
Right, yeah, I did see that, yeah.
Larry points out in the chat that the licensee would have had to have taken the ethics portion of the AICPA exam required for licensing.
That's what I would have thought, too, that he should have taken something before he got licensed.
Yeah, I'm not clear what's on that, but I'm positive it doesn't focus on state-specific requirements.
It does not. It's primarily AICPA Code of Conduct.
So comment, he's licensed in January of 19 and he issues this report in April of 21. That's a long time. Yeah, I would think he would have had to pass something in terms of ethics, right? But don't you have to pass the ethics exam to get licensed, to actually get this permit?
You have to pass the AICPA ethics exam to get licensed. And then once you're licensed, you take a 2-hour state-specific course every 2 years. And he just fell in his rotation of licensure that he wasn't required to take that ethics course in his first renewal. So he may have taken it just voluntarily, but he was not required to take it. And I don't think that's necessarily a basis for not following the law and the rules. It was just a mitigating factor that we noted. Potential.
Certainly. And if to go off what Wendy just said, if you're not comfortable with the mitigating factors affecting the civil penalty, we can just go for the $1,500 standard penalty. That's always an option.
My only comment is I think as early in the career as this person is with a $750 fine, I seriously doubt he's ever going to do that again. So, I mean, to get slapped that early in your career, I think this guy's going to be on straight and narrow. I mean, my opinion.
Any good with the recommendation? That one? Okay.
I guess I don't have a problem with the recommendation, but I would just wonder, it seems like that's an issue with our licensing procedure when you can use I didn't know that. And just, particularly when you're just starting out and you can say, oh, well, I didn't know that. I mean, yeah, you get a penalty, but I guess I mean, I maybe should have known, but I would have thought that they would have been required to know this before they could start practicing. But I guess if that's the rule, maybe the rule needs to be different. Just a comment.
I will add that Larry is in favor of the standard penalty, but if the group decides differently, we should definitely document why we use the lower amount. So he's in favor of the standard penalty, which would be double. And if we go with the mitigating, to make sure that it's documented.
So should we consider that Larry making a motion to that effect? Is it that strong of a comment, or?
That he says, I think standard penalty is warranted, but if not, we should document why we use the lower amount.
Are we saying the mitigating factor is that he didn't know?
We did consider that, yes, Janet. So if that is not the will of the group, that's absolutely fine.
I was going to
Okay,
say.
I'm not on the committee, but I agree with Larry. At a minimum, it ought to be the higher. I don't think I didn't know is a good excuse.
Let me ask you a question. It's been years since I have filed one of these contractor license renewals. I sold my practice in 2003. It's been that long. So he says here, respondent noted that he did not properly read the instructions provided by the contractor's license application. Does it actually say in the application, you've got to be peer reviewed? I mean, is that?
It has previously said that you have to have the financials reviewed by a properly licensed CPA, but it doesn't go into. We've tried to request that they make some additions that better define that, but I don't know that those have been. I can't confirm that those changes have been made.
Yeah, and Robert, you raise a very good question. This is Kevin. This is, now that we've kind of gotten our CPE disciplinary issues under control by virtue of the rule changes that we've made, this type of violation is among the most frequent that we receive. And just for the thousands of practicing CPAs that may be actually streaming into this meeting at this moment, just as a point of information, what happens here is that if you are filing this type of report with the contractors board and you do not have a firm permit or you are not subjected to peer review, they will check you on it. The problem with that is they do it after the fact. So after you've already committed the offense, they will come back and find out that you've committed the offense with near certainty. And so we have been working informally with the contractors board to try to do something to get a gate at the front end to head all of this off, because by the time they find out and they file a complaint, the CPA is embarrassed, the client is embarrassed for that CPA, and then we have a disciplinary matter on our hands to meddle through with. And so we are really working to try to front end load that kind of a warning. Robert, you put your finger on it.
Greg, you made an excellent suggestion in the last meeting. I don't remember exactly what it was, but something about pre-approval or some sort of certificate that has to be shown and submitted with the application.
All of this could be put to bed once and for all if the contractor's license board would simply ask for a copy of the accounting firm's peer review report, a one-page document. But we've not been successful in getting that done yet.
We're still working.
I just pulled up the application instructions. They have finally added that you have to have an active CPA license and firm permit, but I still don't see anything that references peer review, and I've just pulled it off online right now, so it would be the most recent. So they've made some changes, but it doesn't appear that they've made all the changes.
Okay, so we have some differences of opinion on the penalty on this case. Do I have a motion?
Can I ask a question first? Are these two issues mutually exclusive? I mean, one of them is firm permit, and the other one is peer review program. I can have one without the other. Are there really, I mean, I guess there's two violations, and back to Larry's original thought, is that make us lean towards two penalties? I don't know. I understand the mitigation also.
You need to have both in order to submit a properly acceptable review report, because that's an attest service. So we require both in the state of Tennessee.
Part of the complexity relates to our matrix, and you have the penalty guidelines, some of the package. So we talk on the first page about aggravating factors and then mitigating factors. And then, as Wendy pointed out to me today that I'd forgotten, we even have the potential to assess penalties on a daily basis. So there's a lot of leeway with the penalties, even though we have the matrix. Still awaiting a motion on this case.
Larry says he will make a motion that we assess the standard penalty in this case in order to be consistent with other cases presented. The standard, I believe, is $1,500. That's $750 per violation. So for not having a firm permit and not being enrolled in a approved peer review program.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. We have any more discussion? I guess we need a roll call vote. Correct.
Fred Gilbert,
Aye.
Gay Moon,
Aye.
David Crenshaw,
Aye.
Rob Vance,
Aye.
and Mr. Elmore.
He votes aye.
Good. Case 8 involves due professional care and relates to tax services. This is regarding preparation and filing of IRS Form 990 for tax exempt organizations. The respondent was doing some work pro bono, as I understand it, Sherry, but also there was some bookkeeping relationship where he or she felt like there were some fees owed, but it's agreed, I believe, by the parties that a lot of the work was pro bono, and even pro bono work requires that the respondent exercise due professional care, which we're not sure happened in this case. So there's a recommendation for a civil penalty of $1,000. Comments or questions?
I would just comment, I'm disturbed that they didn't respond to the investigator at all. I mean, zero response.
Initial response to the complaint, and then there was one email response saying, I need more time, and then that was it. There were multiple follow-ups.
Thank you. That's not good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order question, if I may. Since we're going to have a lot of discussion on each case, do you think we should vote on each one individually now or come back?
We certainly may do so in committee now if you would like, and the committee members would like to do that. That would be just fine. And then that doesn't preclude us from voting by group tomorrow at the board meeting, since basically things will have already been hashed out. But if you'd like to vote on each one, that's perfectly fine.
So does the committee have a preference on that? So the ones that we agree to, we can just lump them in as one motion, but pull the others out? Okay. So are we good on case number 8, the recommended penalty?
I am.
Did we do 1,000 because of lack of response from the?
I believe that's standard discipline, isn't it? I don't think we could go with aggravating factors because of the lack of response, but we did not do that here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Case 9 is relates to disciplinary action from a state agency, that is the Comptroller's Office, termination from peer review program, and we have a recommended civil penalty of $1,000. Place the firm permit in probation status audit engagements. So though this case was the subject of a governmental audit engagement, there are other matters that may be more elementary. Is that appropriate, do you think?
So he's had multiple violations or multiple peer review violations, if you will. So many of these deficiencies were repeat findings from the previous peer review. I mean, he's had deficiencies and continuously without correcting it. That's what it sounds like to me.
There's been on past peer reviews, and at this point, and that's not in this report because it's recent, he has been terminated from peer review at this point. That's why the language is in there for an exemption from peer review as another option.
So if you're terminated, that means, what does that mean?
A termination from the peer review program means that you underwent a peer review and you didn't do something in compliance with the requirements after having that peer review. So maybe you didn't respond, maybe you didn't complete corrective actions, something of that nature causes a termination after you've had the peer review and a report has been issued.
Maria, will you remind me, is this the standard penalty?
Yes, and also I would like to note that I think maybe last year we had a case with almost the same fact pattern, and I used that for guidance on what we would recommend for this case.
Comments, questions?
$1,000 penalty, or $1,000 penalty, I guess, and probational status on his peer review or their peer review. Is that until he complies?
His license would be provided us with a completed peer review report, which does not appear that's going to happen now, or he agrees to not do any more test work and places an exemption from peer review on file with the board.
You mean license or his firm permit?
It's his firm permit.
Oh.
Is this a license? Was this individual? I can't remember. Is this individual or the firm?
Firm permit will be placed on probation.
Okay. So
Okay.
yeah, it is firm permit.
So it's not his license, CPA license.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good with the proposed discipline? I think we're halfway through with these, but the complexities increase as we Okay. Case number 10 is a peer review violation. This I forgot if that was it's a firm. This firm was dropped from peer review. Respondent did not take corrective action after notification by the board. This involved an audit, again with a registered accounting firm, and respondent has completed at least one audit engagement in 2019, but has claimed an exemption from peer review the last two renewal cycles. The recommendation is a civil penalty of $500, and proof of a completed peer review is required by, does your document say July 31st? I think we had made a change, and I believe your information says July 31st. I'm asking.
April 30th, 2022.
April 30, 2022. Okay. Had different drafts of this. I apologize for that. April 30, 22. Okay. So that's one option. The other is if the firm ceases a test work, alternative discipline is a $3,000 civil penalty with no peer review requirement. So the firm would have an option or options.
And Larry did have a question on that. Wouldn't we need something in the agreement if he accepts the $3,000 option to keep him from going to do a test work in the future. But the answer to that question is whenever we have firms that don't do peer review, and so what they sign is an exemption form just attesting to the fact that they will not complete any test work. So that would basically be what we used. And then of course if that's violated, that gives us grounds to say, you know, you said you weren't going to, you did, and that's how we move forward on those.
Questions, comments?
November 2019 audit, the last audit that the firm did. They haven't done any other audit work.
Harry, do you know the answer to that one? Oh, okay, sorry.
The other question is April 30, 2022 is that to have it set up, or is that to have a completed peer review? That's a tight turnaround.
So the firm has re-enrolled in the program and they were provided an earlier date, and when we gave this date to have it, give them a chance to have the committee review it and release it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Else?
So what happens if they don't pass this peer review?
If a firm does not pass their peer review, the only time this board has gotten involved historically is if you have subsequent non-pass reports. So a first one is kind of a chance to correct yourself. And if you do not pass a subsequent, then in many cases you're terminated, and then this board considers it through the complaint process.
And we're notified that you're notified then of that.
If a firm is terminated, I'm notified. Yes.
Okay.
And Gay, to answer your question, this November 2019 was his one and only audit. That's
but
what
he's applying to get back into the peer review program.
But just for that question, for the response, he said that was only the only audit.
Which, Gay, I believe that's why we came up with the option, because a lot of these firms don't ever want to do this stuff again. So,
and also I was going to say, I reached out to him to ask, like, do you know what you want to do? So then that way I could just do a very definite recommendation on the legal report, but I wasn't able to get in touch with him to ask if he was wanting to continue to do audit work, and to go through the peer review process.
He have to decide A or B, or can we give him that choice?
That it's written so that he can choose either and be in compliance.
All right, because I wasn't sure if we were supposed to choose.
No.
Okay, all right, thank you. Look like two appropriate options for firm to all. I mean, in my mind, I understand that the firm is going to choose.
Good with the penalties. Okay. Case number 11 is another peer review violation. This is a registered accounting firm dropped from peer review. Respondent did not take corrective action after notification by the board, and this is a proposed civil penalty of $500, which is the standard discipline, and then we would also require proof of completed peer review by July 31st. Material that we have, I'll read just a little bit. Respondent submitted a response stating that she failed to comply with peer review requirement due to staffing changes and the loss of 3 family members due to COVID. Respondent has since re-enrolled in peer review program and has a due date of March 31st, 2022.
I think it's appropriate. Sounds like she had a rough year. Yeah.
Okay.
Larry agrees with the recommendation.
Thank you. Case number 12, peer review violation. This again is a registered accounting firm. Termination from peer review program for failure to complete corrective actions. This one's a civil penalty proposed of $1,000. Aggravating factors. I'm sorry. Previous discipline in 2019 for failure to comply with peer review requirements. A respondent completes a significant number of audit engagements. Mitigating factor is the respondent has re-enrolled in peer review.
I have a question. What's the difference between the first violation of $3,000 and the second violation of $1,000?
So 1,000 is for if they are getting back enrolled and complying with the requirements of the peer review program. $3,000 is if, for the other one, it was if they just were going to forego the whole peer review process. So Wendy, how much does it cost to get in? There's a reason we do it that way, because it's a cost.
So this one's different than a lot of the ones we see. That historically, this firm had issued a number of audits and was not enrolled in the program, and so that was the reason for the $3,000 initially. The firm got enrolled, had their peer review, and was terminated this time around for not completing the corrective actions. I think, as we noted in this situation, the firm is now back in the program, and we do not have proof of any engagements issued during the time that they were not in the program, which was only the span of about 45 days. So this one's a little bit different than most of the ones we see.
Does Larry have comments? Nope. Okay. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit low, but I mean that they complete a number of audits. They say they should know better. I mean it's different than this one-off, the last one that done one audit or something like that, and slap on the wrist. I'm sorry, I screwed up. But these people should know better. I mean, does the investigator agree with my comment?
I did not investigate this one, but I would agree. I'm trying to pull it up. I can tell you how many governmental audits were issued in 2021. I just keep a looks like there were 11 governmental audits that I'm aware of that were issued in 2021.
And $1,000 is the standard recommended amount?
In general, when a firm has been terminated, that's what we have recommended.
And the way I got to the standard penalty is like there's the aggravating factors of all the audits, but then there's also the mitigating factors of that they re-enrolled and they're now complying. So I just landed right back in the middle. But if you guys want to, do more, that's fine. We can change it.
And Wendy is correct. Just wanted to emphasize that nothing was issued during the period where they were terminated.
Case 13, peer review. We have unlicensed activity and peer review violation. This involved the issuance of a review report, and this is the other case I referred to earlier with the Board of Licensing Contractors. This is an individual license, and there's a $1,500 civil penalty recommended, and I believe, Maria, that's 2 violations at $750.
course, I have another comment. I thought the 1,500 was too much until you explained it just then that that's 2 violations. So thank you.
And then Larry's comment on this, that he just referenced back to number 7 where we had that discussion, and he said it needs to be consistent, and now it is. So that's not an issue. And then also he noted that the respondent in her response said that she would complete the ethics course as soon as she was able to in 2022 as part of her CPE. And Larry said she needs to do that we need a date on that rather than as soon as she is able to. Now, I will say it's not the usual recommended discipline that they complete the ethics course for these, so I don't think we actually need a date, but on it.
It looks, she just renewed her license, so she would have had it to renew the license in December.
I think she was just trying to say in her response, like, she was very sorry and that it happened, and she just wanted to say, like, I'll do it again, I guess, as soon as I'm able to in the new year.
So we're good with that case, I believe. Okay. Case 14 is a peer review violation. This is a firm. It was dropped from the peer review program. Respondent did not take corrective action after notification by the board. And aggravating factors, previous discipline for failure to enroll in peer review. Respondent habitually enrolls and drops from the program. Board is unaware of the completed peer review since its first enrollment, and the recommended penalty is $3,000. Comments? Maria?
There was just one typo at the recommendation. It says 2022 and it should say 2021, so I'll update that accordingly. And then Larry just said, shouldn't there be additional civil penalty for not complying with the 2011 consent order? This recommended discipline is an aggravating level, so it's at $3,000. It is more than the standard 1,500.
3,000 is the max, isn't it, for all penalties?
No,
It's not? Okay.
Unless we do per day.
yeah.
Well, the rules allow for $1,000 per day per violation. So you have to be able to prove that.
So are we good with case 14? Okay, thank you. Case 15. Another peer review case, unlicensed activity, firm issued audit engagement while permit was in expired status, and firm was dropped from peer review for failure to complete corrective action. In this case, we have the proposed discipline of $3,000.
I had a question about this. There's a typo here. His first license in 96 or 1963?
I'll look at it and I'll make sure it's right.
Because that would make this firm permit very old. I may be 59 years old. So
It's 96.
Okay.
I'll make
All right.
sure that's changed.
Okay.
Is the committee good with the penalty? And I'm looking for approval by the committee, but of course all board members are welcome to participate. We have some in the past, but maybe not these last 4 or 5 cases. So, okay.
Sorry, I do have one comment from Larry
okay.
on 15. He says that this penalty seems inconsistent with 7 and 13, and that we should require ethics training for this individual.
This is a firm in 15, though, correct?
Yes. And in the past, we've done, let me make sure, but yeah, so it is a firm, But in the past, we've required all CPAs who are licensed at the firm to require ethics training. That's a route we've done in the past in the consent order. It's up to you all.
I have a question. So it says here that the issuance was after the firm's permit entered expired status, and they were terminated from the program. Did the firm permit become expired because of the peer review problem? They just didn't renew it properly?
Yes, and I reached out to the respondent and got a response saying that he would basically re-enroll in peer review. And I said, you know, you need to talk to the board staff because your firm permit is also expired, and never got a response.
Oh, no explanation?
No. He said, okay, I'll do it. And then I followed up again and no response. So
I checked this morning. The firm's still expired. There was also an audit involved with this one, which, Maria, I think you asked me about earlier, but and I talked to Greg a little bit about this earlier, but historically this board has the $3,000 penalty has also been geared towards firms that do audit work because it's more consistent with what you might pay to have a peer review of an audit firm versus a firm that only does compilations and reviews would historically be more, maybe around something like $1,000. So you don't want somebody issuing audit work and then they get a deal by only paying $1,000 and a civil penalty when they might pay more than that, a significant amount more than that to have the peer review. You don't want them to avoid the requirements through the civil penalty.
And this person thought that TSCPA was the one who was going to reinstate his license?
yes.
That's why I asked if it was 1963.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not being flippant. I mean, I just wondered if this
Yeah.
person had a cognitive issue or something.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
Good with the proposed discipline? Okay. Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would ask you to help me to make sure I'm doing this correctly, but I believe we need to approve cases 8 through 15. I believe we've accepted the recommended discipline on those cases.
That's what I have shown also.
Okay, thank you.
The one item is the
Case
on
7.
case 10, the completed peer review is required by April 30. That was a typo, I think, that Maria had mentioned would be corrected. So, but yes.
So I would ask that the committee, I would ask for a motion and second, and then a roll call vote for cases 8 through 15.
So moved.
Excuse me, Greg, what about 7?
We will vote on it. We've already voted on it. I believe.
Because we increased it. We
That's
changed
correct.
it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
there was
you.
a roll call on 7 separately.
But I will take that as a second to the motion.
I do.
Thank you. Okay, so roll call vote, please.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
Gay Moon,
Aye.
David Crenshaw,
Aye.
Rob Vance,
Aye.
Larry Elmore,
Okay, so motion approved, correct?
Larry, explain in the recommendation on case 15 that violation of consent order is part of amount.
Not sure I understand that.
I'm not sure I understand the comment.
So I think the motion was approved, notwithstanding,
Okay.
correct?
That is something that can potentially be clarified tomorrow if Larry or the board desires. So.
We have 2 more cases. There's light at the end of the tunnel. We have 2 representations. The first one, case number 16, involves acts discreditable. This violation of AICPA Code of Professional Conduct. It's a Title IX situation. Practitioner is also a CPA and attorney in North Carolina. North Carolina closed this complaint, citing that the matter was outside its jurisdiction. After legal analysis, I think our staff, our board attorney has concluded the same, that this is outside our jurisdiction. And you can see that information on the legal report synopsis. But we have a recommendation that we close this case with a letter of warning with a recommendation to refer matter to the AICPA for consideration. Respondent states that he is a member of AICPA.
Greg, if I remember, you don't have to be a member of the AICPA to fall into their compliance, if I recall, right? I mean, I just remember that back in my mind from 100 years ago.
As a licensee, you're required to follow everything in the AIC
because of the state board, right?
Right.
Because all right, okay.
There's language in the rules and law.
Yes, but the AICPA will not investigate a case unless you're a member or a member of the state society. But in this case, this individual says they're a member of the AICPA. So if they were not a member of either of those organizations, the onus would be on the state board to determine whether discipline was warranted.
Comments or questions? We think we need to propose discipline these two cases on representations individually. So I would entertain a motion to approve.
To approve the letter of warning.
Yes, sir. Sorry,
Okay.
to approve the proposed discipline. I wasn't clear.
So moved.
So moved. Second. Thank you, David. Roll call, please.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
David Crenshaw.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
Larry Elmore.
Okay, and our final case involves failure to exercise due professional care with regard to tax services, some alleged fraudulent activity. This complaint was previously in litigation monitoring status until all appeals were exhausted. Litigation has now been resolved and actually in favor of the respondent. Complainant has agreed to pay respondent $20,000 in damages and asked the board to drop the complaint as all matters have been resolved. So the recommendation from our staff attorney is that we close the case. Okay, we do need to approve this one individually, so I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Sorry, real quick. I hate to slow it down. Larry had a comment on this. I need to read.
Okay.
And I'll defer to Stuart on this, but anyhow, he said that the complainant dropping the charges or complaint should not relieve the respondent of the various rule violations, or the question is, was that handled with the letter of warning that was issued in 2018?
That would have been on a different case.
That was on a different case. The parties, the complainant agreed to the matters.
Stuart, we're having a hard time hearing you. You're really breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
Or just a little bit.
Just a blurb.
Okay. Are you able? I guess you can hear me now.
Better.
Yeah.
Oh. The microphone thing keeps going all the way down and up, and it's going all over the place. The complainant on this case, he decided that to drop all the charges or any type of allegations against the respondent. The respondent actually won the case, and the complainant was ordered to pay costs and fees of the respondent. So all matters in this complaint should be dropped according to the settlement agreement.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I can, Maria, do you think you can, like, re-explain? Oh, you don't? Okay. Maybe I can try, and Stuart, you can tell me if I'm off base at all. But Larry's question was, the outcome of the litigation was in favor of the respondent, and everything else is sealed. We're not, and they agreed to drop the complaint against the respondent. So there isn't anything to go on from a complaint standpoint. And the letter of warning is related to a prior complaint that didn't have anything to do with this one. Is that fair, Stuart?
I would just say, to me, the complainant paid the bills that he owed him for, so that means that he did the work, I guess, sufficiently enough, or at least their damages. I mean, I'm reading into that, damages for the fees and/or my attorney's fees, that sort of thing. So that's, I mean, to me, it's sort of an admission of, I know it's a settlement. People settle all the time just to get rid of it, but still, I think that's favorable to the respondent. So
I would agree with Wendy and that comment. Did I come through on that?
We can't hear you, Stuart, but Stuart did send me a message. He said that the complainant agreed to drop the allegations. There's no proof of violations against the respondent. That when the complaint was filed, they're just that, allegations. And to Rob's point, I mean, you know, they had to pay $20,000 back to the respondent. So, and then he said, just to clarify, the letter of warning is related to a prior complaint.
You usually don't get paid if you're in the wrong.
That's been my experience.
So once again, I'll entertain a motion to approve the that we close this case.
So move.
So move. Second.
I will second.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
Gay Moon, David Crenshaw,
Aye.
Rob Vance,
Aye.
and Larry Elmore.
It's approved by majority, nonetheless, correct. So, Mr. Chairman, I believe that concludes our committee activity for today.
Okay, very well. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, members of the committee. We had a pretty good cross-section of cases today for this quarter here. So thankfully, our CPE cases are being reduced significantly, and maybe with a lot of cooperation and perhaps some providence here, we can work with the Contractors Board to get a little bit more upfront activity going to head off some of these non-firm permit and non-peer review violations.
Mr. Chairman, I would also ask if there are any other regulatory boards that have the reason I'm asking is because I think it's required for the dealer's license for motor vehicle, and I don't know if they're reporting those.
They have in the past, not anything like what we get from the Contractors Board.
So we need to.
I think the difference there is that there's a CPA that reviews for the Contractors Board, and it's a staff level position with no credential with motor vehicle, and that turns over quite a bit. So it's if that person's in tune enough to see a problem.
All I'm suggesting is that any additional language or any requirements we do at the Contractors Board, we should also see if there are other regulatory boards that have those kind of requirements and do the same with them. Because I know the motor vehicle, because we're having to get one for something. So.
That's an excellent suggestion. Thank you, Judy. All right, we will proceed to the executive committee, and the primary substantive matter for this committee is just an update as to where we are in the interim fiscal year on our financial reports. And for that, I'll turn the floor over to Wendy, our executive director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You should have in your packet information on FY22 financial results to date. The first document you will see is what the department calls our net position statement. On there you'll see that as of the end of November, we have revenue. This is case and complaint plus licensing revenue is at $231,415. Expenses are at $347,428 with a year-to-date deficit of $116,013. Of course, only being through November, we don't have the significant revenue from renewals in for December and January. So, of course, that will turn around once we see that. From a revenue standpoint, down at the bottom, you'll see some historical trends there. It's interesting to note that individual licensees have certainly delayed the renewals until December with the CPE requirement, I think, being that they have to provide that listing. You'll see in 19 how much revenue we brought in from renewals in November of 19 versus the two subsequent years. And so 20 and 21 were the 20 renewal season is when we started requesting the listing of continuing education. So interesting note there. If you go on to the second page, at the last meeting, I didn't have our final results for FY21, but I do have those now, and they are listed in the first column there. They are very, very close to what I provided you within $100 from the last meeting. The item that I was not aware of specifically at the last meeting was that you'll see down there a core expense of $81,348. And there's new legislation passed this past year that allows us to use our reserve money for certain technology-related expenses. And so that's exciting news. So that $81,000 was pulled from reserves for this past fiscal year. And so you will see our final reserve balance after our net revenue to reserves, and then that expense from core is at $1,486,221. So that's where we ended. As far as our November FY22 results so far, our revenue is up roughly 35% to the prior year. There were some significant IT issues in the prior renewal season, which delayed our notices and the rate by which people renewed. So we have seen more normalization of that this year. We still had some problems, but it wasn't as significant as it was last year. And we were able to get our notices out timely this year, both via mail and email. So that's good news there. On the longevity compensation, you'll see a pretty significant increase there over the prior year. And that initially with COVID, the salary increases were halted, but then reinstated later in FY21, and it went into fiscal year 22. So some of the pay for performance rewards to staff fell into that longevity compensation. So that's why you'll see a difference there. Communications and shipping, you will see a 44% increase over the prior year there. And as I noted, some of the issues we had last year with renewals, we did not get the firm notices out until December. And so this year we were timely with that. So therefore the shipping charges are higher in that line item than they were in the prior year. Most everything else is rather insignificant until you get to the year-end cost backs. We are down 17% in the year-end cost backs, which of course we always like to see. I've noted that the savings are from the administration and legal areas, and probably in the IT area we're seeing some improvement there, And then in legal expenses assessed from the legal department is where we're seeing the savings from a cost back standpoint. And that really concludes the highlights of the items I wanted to cover with you all. If anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy about the financial interim reports?
Wendy, just a quick question, just out of curiosity. Do you know August of this past year, the technology was double what it is any other month? Do you know what that might be in the cost backs?
So that technology is an assessment for reg boards in general. So let me think here. No, I don't. I'd have to get some. I think, and I'll clarify for you, but I think that is overall technology. So if they had to do something for our core platform that affected all boards, we all got assessed based on the number of licensees and that type of thing. Okay. So it wasn't maybe a direct expense. Like if we ask for something to be done just for our board, that will fall under or up above under the Edison expenses. But if there's something for the department that needs to be done technology-wise, then that gets assessed through cost back. So that's definitely where it's coming in, but exactly what it's for, I don't have that.
No, that's sufficient. Yeah. I just, with us having the core expense with the technology, I was just wondering what we were getting hit with there.
Right.
Thank you, Judy. Any other questions for Wendy? Okay. We'll have one last item. We will have a rulemaking hearing tomorrow. This is with respect to a rule that has already been previously approved by the board, but it will be a very formalized and required process, so that it'll be fairly scripted. And I wondered, Wendy or Maria, if you could just walk us through what will take place tomorrow and kind of set the stage there.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at 9 a.m., we will do the rulemaking hearing. If you all recall, we did this back in May of 2021 with the ethics rule. We will have a court reporter here, and this language that we're adopting tomorrow is in reference to updating accreditation entities. There's just some outdated language in our rules right now, and then also goes through courses that are acceptable, and all that information, if you want to review it beforehand, is in the packet with the red line language. And so, yeah, it is just very scripted. I'll lead you all through it. We'll have to just go through formalities of adopting certain statutory requirements. I'll sum up the rules for the record, and then we'll have an opportunity for the public to comment, give any feedback, and then you all will be able to, converse if we do receive feedback. And then other than that, it should be good to go. Do y'all have any questions or?
Given that the board has already approved the rule effectively, will there be an action item from the board that will be required?
Yes. So there are three or four different items you all have to vote on for the record. So when you initially approved that language, that was giving me authority to file with the Secretary of State and to get it moving through the process. I had the administration approve the rule. The governor's office approved the rule, and it was filed for hearing. This is more of the official actually adopting the language. And so, yes, we do need several action items to vote on tomorrow.
And one other question, I think, there are, I guess, different avenues for rulemaking. In this particular case, we are going through a public rulemaking hearing. We've not necessarily done this before in other instances, but I remember when Wendy and I were appearing before the Joint Operations Committee, it was their expressed preference that boards would use the public rulemaking hearing process for hearings, and I understand now that that's also basically a departmental preference and a gubernatorial preference as well.
Yes, that is correct. We used to do proposed and proposed rulemakings. You don't have to solicit comment in the form. You still solicit comment, but you don't have to in the form of a formal rulemaking hearing. And so now the preferred method going forward is for these public rulemaking hearings.
Okay. Thanks. Are there any other board member questions about that process tomorrow? Okay, I think the committees have completed their hard work, and so I appreciate very much the diligence, and also for those that are traveling, safely getting here. And we will see everyone tomorrow. I believe at 8:30 is our scheduled start time. And again, we will still need to have a physical quorum present, but once we do, we will be able to have those that are not physically present still participate via roll call and discussion in every action item that we have tomorrow. So thanks everybody, and we'll see everyone in the morning. Stay safe and well.